Good afternoon, everyone. This is Francisco. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon for our advanced setup class, where we're going to learn how to set up our time off by step rules. And so the concept behind this is very simple. The concept is, of course, that those within your organization are going to accrue time off, vacation, sick, personal time, based on years of service. Now, within your organization, you might have different groups of people that will accrue time off in different ways. Perhaps the steps might be different, or the amount of time that they're earning for each step might be different. So we're going to start things off this afternoon by learning how to create work groups. The work groups are where your rules are tied to. In other words, if you have, let's say, two different groups of employees within your organization that accrue time based on years of service, but the rules are different, you want to make sure that you create separate work groups. That way you can create the rule sets tied to the work group, and then you're going to assign the work group to that employee or group of employees. So some examples of some of the work groups that you might use in your organization are PBA or SOA, found in the police department side of things, or you might have groups like AFSCME, more commonly used in for municipal workers. But even within those groupings, you might have subgroups. And in other words, you might have groups of employees that are all covered under PBA, but because of the type of work they do or the types of schedules they work, they might accrue time off a little differently. So you might have to create multiple PBA groups, SOA groups, or even AFSCME groups to help accommodate those rules. Now, before we get started with building the work groups and setting the rules for allotted time off, I'd just like to get an idea from you as to how you accrue time off now. An example might be vacation, sick, and personal time accrued at the beginning of the year, January 1st. Or you might have some folks that accrue time on their anniversaries. So when they complete a particular step, they might receive their allotments on their anniversaries. So we have about 3 groups with us this afternoon. And I have not muted the microphones yet. So if you would like to just let me know, and I'll just sort of call on each department, or you can choose to just give me a brief explanation using the chat option. You can certainly do that. So thank you, Newtown. You guys accrue all of your time on January 1st based on years of service. Brenda, thank you. Also done the same way based on January 1st accruals. And Kathy, I see you just joined us. We were talking a little bit about setting up rules for allotted time off. So based on years of service, the system will automatically accrue time off. And what I was asking the group as you were dialing in is if you can just sort of summarize how you guys accrue time off. Do you do it at the beginning of the year? Do you do it based on the anniversary date? If you can give me an idea of what that is, you can just shout that out to me.
Absolutely. We accrue every pay period, and it's based on your years of service. So from 1 to 3 years, you may accrue 3.1 hour every pay period. And then I'm at 8 years, so I accrue almost, I think it's, 4 point something every pay period of sick and vacation.
Okay, wonderful. So in your case, Kathy, I'm getting that same allotment every 2 weeks, and then once I have passed that step, that anniversary, the next time the pay period allotment takes place, that number might jump up.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to talk about setting those rules up based on the examples that you guys have provided to me. But before we even create those rules, let's take a couple steps back and let's take a look at our Employee Center under the Administration drop-down menu. And so you will recall that the Employee Profile screen is where we entered all of our employees who are posted onto a schedule. And within each employee profile, you may remember that there was a hire date and accrual date field provided. Now, this is going to be a crucial part in setting up your rules. And so, of course, you have your hire date, which is when the employee began working in your department or agency. But the accrual date is what our system is going to use to calculate years of service for the purposes of applying that time off. And the reason why we kept those as two separate fields is in the event that you have someone who may have started on a particular date with your agency, but maybe they came from another department, they might get credit for those 3 or 4 years that they served in that other department. So that allows you to set what that date is. So when we start building the rules, from years 1 through 5, 6 through 10, the system is actually going to look at that accrual date. And that's what it's going to use to make the determination. So, of course, if the accrual date is wrong, then the allotments are going to get thrown off. Okay? So you'll certainly want to make sure that you just double-check those and correct them if necessary. Okay, let's close out of the employee profile screen. And we're going to move over to the List Center category. And we're going to select the last screen on the list called Set Up Workgroups. Now, the examples I gave before were PBA, SOA, AFSCME, or the common groups that we would see. And that is simply because when we're talking about a group like AFSCME, the rules for how they accrue time off are contractual. So my recommendation is when you're creating your work groups, take a look at all the different contractual groups you have within your agency and create a work group for each. I'm going to create one for the PBA, so I'll click on the New button. I'll enter a code, which will have to be 5 characters or less, and a description, which you should have about 15 characters on. So for the description, I'll just go ahead and stick with a PBA. And I'm going to click on the Save button. Now, each one of these is going to have the time off allotment rules set individually. I'll go into AFSCME, set up how much vacation, sick, and personal time they get. I'm going to do the same for PBA, and then the same for SOA. Now, if any one of these groups has a mixture of people that might accrue time differently, you may have to split these up. An example of that might be if you have 8-hour employees, 12-hour employees, and if the allotments are going to change based on that, you may want to consider creating PBA 12-hour groups or PBA 8-hour groups. Now, you want to just look ahead to some of the other advanced setup classes that you might be taking. And one of those is our holiday rules class. And so in that class, you're going to learn how to set up automatic payments for those that are working on holidays. So going back to my PBA group, if I have some folks that get holiday pay and others that don't, consider splitting up your groups. For instance, you might have detectives within the PBA group that don't get holiday pay, but the patrol groups within the PBA do. So again, try keeping them separate, because although they might accrue time off the same way, there might be other rules like holiday pay that might differ. Okay, we're going to close out of this screen and we're going to start building the rules. Now, at this time, are there any questions on setting up your work groups? Okay. One of the last things we're going to do this afternoon is we're going to assign our employees to one of these work groups. And so that's how the rules that you create get tied back to the employees. I'm going to show you a very nice, simple way of doing this. But if there's no questions on setting up the work groups, at least at this time, we can close out of this screen. And while we're still under the Administration drop-down menu, we're going to move down to the Workgroup Center, and we're going to select Allotted Days Off by Step Rules. From this screen, we're going to select the work group that we want to create rules for. Next, we're going to select the type of day off that we're going to build the rule for. And below, you're going to see an example of how some of your rules might be set. So the rules that you're looking at are based on a January 1st accrual. And in the grid, the first column is years of service, the amount of time being allotted, this is the maximum amount of times that a rule can be applied on any given year. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but based on the examples that you all gave me, I don't believe anyone's going to be using the max times column. Next, under frequency, you're going to notice that you have the ability to accrue time based on any month by pay period, on a monthly basis, weekly basis. Depending on which option you choose from the frequency drop-down menu, you can also set a day. So let's talk a little bit about how this particular rule set would work. Beginning on year 2, any employee belonging to the PBA group will be given 60 hours of vacation time on January 1st. You'll notice that my step effective is set to December 31st. What that means is that we're not necessarily looking at the employee's anniversary date. What we're saying is that as long as the employee has begun their second year of service, we will essentially front load them their time. So you may have just hired me today, September 13th. That is considered year 1 for me. I am beginning year 1. On January 1st, I am beginning year 2. It doesn't mean that I have completed that year. Okay. And that's where that December 31st comes into place. It says as long as I am reaching that milestone, somewhere between January and December, you are just front-loading me that time. Now that rule will remain in place until I begin my 6th year of service. And so if my contract reads that after completion of 5 years, I get 120 hours, you are going to enter a 6. Once again, that rule is applied until the next line, in this case, after 10 years of completed service, or on my 11th year of service, that number jumps up to 180. And after 21 years of service, it tops out. So as long as there isn't any other entries after that, from that point moving forward, any employee after 20 years will receive 300 hours of vacation time, at least in my system here. Okay. So we're going to set up a new rule set. And for that, I'm going to use my ASME group. So let's try another example. I'll use year 2, so after the first completed year of service, I may receive a smaller amount of time because I'm receiving those allotments more frequently. So if we're doing it by pay period, select whether or not you want the time off applied on the first day of the pay period or on the last day of the pay period. Now, because your pay periods are defined, there's no need to set a day. And under the step effective field, we're going to choose anniversary. So let's enter another line. Let's click on the field below it. And perhaps the step changes occur on the 6th year of service. And just for this example, we'll say the allotment goes up to 4.5. Once again, will be applied on the last day of the pay period. and we're going to choose anniversary. So using this example, I will continue to accrue 3.25 hours on every pay period on the last day, to be specific. Now, if my anniversary date is September 13th, then this is the amount that I will be given until I have passed my anniversary. The next allotment that takes place after I've reached that milestone will be 4.5 hours for that particular type of day off. You're going to continue adding those steps until the rules basically max out. Once you have done so, click on the Save button up top. You'll receive confirmation that 3 entries have been updated. And then move on to another group. We did vacation day for AFSCME, right? Let's check my SOA group here. Okay, I already have some rules in there, but if for those of you that are doing the accruals on January 1st, you're going to match more or less what I have here. The amounts might be different, and the years might be different. Now, for most of you, the vacation time will probably be the most, not the most complicated, but the ones that will require the most data entry. While I have my AFSCME group up, I'll go ahead and switch over to a different type of day off, personal. Now, the personal time might be applied per month, by pay period, or based on a January 1st accrual. And I'll use that as an example here. After your first completed year of service, you might receive 4 days of personal time. Well, convert that over to hours. Set the frequency. In this case, I'll just choose January. And because I'm choosing something generic like a month, I have to set the day. And under the step effective rule, you can use December 31st. Of course, if you are accruing this on a monthly basis and there is another step involved, you might have to choose anniversary for that particular item. Now, for many of us, things like personal and sick time may be just a flat number. We might get the same amount. It might not be like vacation time where the number goes up based on years of service. So if that is, in fact, how you operate, just save it. And this rule will be applied like clockwork every year. Now, just before you enter your rules, I just wanted to swing over to the administration drop-down menu, and again, just taking a few steps back to some of your earlier classes, I want to take a look at the Setup Day Off Code screen. And I'll use my vacation day off code as an example here. you'll notice that I have track as day off checked. If your day off does not have this checkbox marked, you're not going to be able to set rules for it. Now, for things like funeral leave, bereavement, we use those as we need them, so we may not necessarily get an allotment every year. So for things like funeral leave, it's perfectly okay to leave that checkbox unmarked. Okay? But the only way you're going to see the full and complete list of day off codes is if that checkbox was marked. What it's doing here is it's saying, well, at some point you're going to set up rules for accruing time for that day off. Now, the other thing you want to take a look at is the units for that time off. Most of you have your day off type set to function in hourly increments. However, if you do have a type of day off that is only measured in days, you need to remember that when you're entering your rules. So using personal time as an example, if I was building a rule for personal time, that would mean 32 days, not 32 hours. Okay. As of this moment, are there any questions on how to set up time off allotment rules? Okay. We'll still have opportunity for questions in a moment. So we have one last screen to take a look at. And the rest of the time that we have allocated for this class, you all have the opportunity to start entering your rules, and I'll be happy to assist you in completing this step. But for now, let's close out of our allotted days off by step rules. And we're going to move back to the Employee Center. And we're going to select a screen called Quick Employee Information Update. Now, this is an interesting screen that allows you to change values found in each employee's profile. So what we want to do here for the purposes of this first advanced class is we want to select our employees, and I have a relatively small department, so I'll select all 30. I'll click on Select and Close. You'll see everyone listed in the window below. And over to the right, I am going to use the drop-down menu to select work groups. Now, because I've used my system for several of these classes, I already have my employees, or at least most of my employees, linked to a work group. Whereas you're doing this for the first time, so this column will probably be completely blank. You want to focus on the new workgroup column. So using Patrick here, who does not have a workgroup affiliation, I'm going to highlight him. I can even hold down my control button and I can select multiple people. Over on the right, I'm going to select which work group I want to assign to those individuals. And I'm going to click on the green arrow. You'll see that now PBA appears under the new work group. And when I click on the Save button, I'll receive confirmation that 3 entries have been updated. Now, if we were to go back to the Employee Center, to the Pay Info screen, which was one of the first screens you were taught how to populate in the first online class, you'll notice that you also have the option to assign people to their work groups on the top left portion of that screen. So you can click on someone's name, select their work group, save, move on to the next name, and just repeat the process until everyone that needs to be in a work group is assigned to one. Personally, I like the quick employee information update screen better. I think it's quicker. I think you'll probably agree. But I'm showing you this because those of you who will remain administrators of the system may have to enter new employees. As you hire new employees, you want to make sure that you tie them to a work group. And so practically speaking, it just might be easier to do it through here for those, new employees here and there that you have to add. Now let's take a quick look at our web portal, which is the application most of your basic users and supervisors will be logging on to. I'm going to log in just with the administrative privileges. And under Reports, we're going to take a look at our Employee Statistical Report. This is a report that most of your users will have access to. It provides them with an overview of all time off, all overtime, everything that has occurred outside of one's basic schedule. And the reason why I want to show you this screen at this stage is because if I scroll down the report, you'll notice a category called Administrative Days Log. What this does is this keeps track of all of the changes made to someone's time bank. So any employee can see when the time, based on the rules that you created, was uploaded into their banks. So here we're using January 1st effective dates for our accruals. You have the type of day and the amount of time that was given. So all of the rules that you're creating for the time off allotments is completely transparent to the employee that it's affecting. Let's go back to the main scheduling application. And we're going to take a look at a screen called Manage Time Banks. So it's the third one down under the Payroll Setup Center. And this is the screen that you're going to use to not only upload the current balances for everyone in your department, but it's also the screen that you can use to modify balances in a number of different ways. So I will select all of my employees from my list of 30. I'm going to select the banks that I want to report on and possibly adjust. So I'll use vacation, sick, and personal time. I'll click on Selecting Close. And in the middle portion, I'm going to click on Update Entries. So what you're seeing here is a log file of all of the time that was uploaded to everyone's banks based on the rules that you created or manual adjustments that you made. In the event someone was not given the right amount of time, you can click on the field and correct it. However, if they were given the wrong amount of time, that means either their hire date or accrual date is wrong, they're not in the right work group, or the rules tied to that work group are not correct. But the point is even though you are automating this process, you still have control over what's going into the system, and as administrators, you will be able to make the proper modifications if necessary. Now, for those of you that are just about ready to go live, the system is not going to retroactively look at their years of service and upload the time for you. So you're going to use this screen to handle the current balance upload. So let's talk about how to do that, because it's a very simple process. It's a little data entry, but it's pretty easy to use. So I'm going to still stick with my 30 employees. But under Select Banks, I am going to choose Vacation, Sick, Personal, and Comp, because for some of you, your people might have some comp balances. So I'll stick with those 4, and I'll click on Selecting Close. Now I'm going to switch over to Add Subtract Bank. And you'll notice that everyone's name is listed with their banks. And now you're going to enter the amount of time. So if we're going live with the system on October 1st, as close to that date as humanly possible, you're going to enter what everyone's balances are. And you're just going to key them in by clicking on the field and typing the value. And at the very bottom, you're going to select the effective date. The effective date is the earliest they can begin using that time. If I was to leave this to September 13th, that means only time off entries for these 4 types must be dated on September 13th or later. Now, my balances might be good beginning October 1st, or you might backdate it, that's fine. And under the reason, you're just going to enter a very brief description of what this upload represents. Click on the Apply button, and when the columns change back to 0, you're done. Now let's take a look at that web portal one more time, and let's refresh. And go back to the allotted or the administrative day log. And you'll see that now we have the comp, personal, sick, and vacation balances I just manually uploaded. So not only will your employees be able to see their time balances, but they're going to see step by step what makes up of those balances. Very important. That's why I mentioned, keep it brief, but make sure it's something that people will understand. Okay, so that's all I have for you on the agenda for today. So with that said, we still have plenty of time for questions, and for those of you that would like to start entering your rules, you can go ahead and start doing that, and I'll be happy to assist you in any way possible. And a question did come in, and this is regarding the employee profile screen. So let's bring that up again. And the question was with regards to the checkbox here. So if that checkbox is not marked, our system is not going to know what date to use. Okay, so it's very important that at the very least, your accrual date should be checked and should match the hire date at the very least. This will only be different from your hire date if that person came from another department and they're getting credit for the year served under that department. Kathy, did you have a question for me?
I do. You said a couple of different times that we should wait until we're almost going live to have these numbers entered. And I'm curious, if I were able to get this data from our payroll specialist, does it matter as long as they are accurate as of the day they're entered and the accruals are set properly, that it's not closest or like, the 11th hour before we go live?
So, I mean, the only reason why I even suggest that, Kathy, is because, these guys are burning time as we speak. So if we had an October 1st effective date and we put in the balances today, they could be wrong by the time you go live, right? Because they're burning through that sick time, personal, and some of those others. So that's why it has to be sort of a coordinated effort. You can train your staff and say, listen, this is how you're going to use it. We're going to go live next week, and between that time, we're going to upload everyone's balances. So your balances are going to be right as of this particular date, but you have to make sure that when you want a day off, you put it in through the system.
I understand. I got it.
Now, the nice thing is, Kathy, is that if there is, if for some reason we do the upload and there is a minor adjustment that we have to make because someone took a last minute time off, you can always use managed time banks to modify that value. Or you can post the day off onto the schedule, and as long as the day off is dated after the effective date, it'll draw from the balance.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so are there any other questions about setting work groups, assigning those work groups, or setting the rules for time off? anything in regards to the managing of the time banks, I'd be happy to cover any one of those in more detail if necessary. Please let me know. Okay. So for those of you that feel comfortable with the process and are ready to proceed, you can certainly do that now if you would like, and I will be happy to remain on standby and assist you further. For those that feel comfortable and will have to enter these in at a later time, you can go ahead and build those on your own time. But I would remind you that if you run into any problems, remember your training help-out sessions, right? Those are your one-on-one 45-minute sessions. And we'd be happy to assist you during those as well. All right, so thank you so much for attending this afternoon. As I said, I will remain on standby. And please enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.